the Women in Wintrust. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you today. My name's Jill Iraqi, and I am one of the co-chairs for the programs team of the Women in Wintrust, and we helped to put this event together. My official title at the bank is Commercial Learning Advisor. My title in life, right, is woman, mother, professional, spouse, caregiver, friend, et cetera, et cetera. So happy to welcome so many of you who identify as some of those same things or different things as well tonight. But before I hand you over to our amazing moderators and panelists, I just want to share my gratitude to you all for spending your International Women's Day with us. Woohoo! So the theme for the day is embracing equity. If you haven't gone to our selfie station yet, make a note and head on over there. But let's real quick, everybody just give yourself a little hug. Embrace that. You're all welcome here. Embrace means to willingly and enthusiastically accept, adopt, and espouse something. Today that something's equity. Yay. But before we get started, it's my job here to get up here and give a few thank yous. So thank you. But instead of applause, even though you so generously shared yours with me earlier, we're going to save that for the Dynamite Women in the Paddle. I don't want your hands to get worn out because there's going to be lots of moments for that. Instead, I'd like to give you a quick little woo. Can I get a woo? All right, so we're going to woo. All right. You all have passed the test. I did not doubt you. All right, so thank you to my co-chairs, Nancy Vassar and Tanya Berger. Give a woo. All right, to the WOW leadership team up here in the front. Woo. To all of our BRG members and supporters. Keep on coming. To our woman-owned catering company, entertaining company. Some food and drink. Woo. To all of our guests, our customers, our friends, our coworkers, and our allies. I see you. All right, to Hannah Brannick and our amazing events team. To our volunteers. And this is going to be a big woo, so thank you so much to Wintrust Bank for sponsoring this event. Woo! All right. And then finally, thank you to our panelists and our moderators. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ann Krennick, who is the chair of the Women of Wintrust and also the CEO of the Chicago Trust Company, and Melissa Donaldson, who's SVP at the bank and our Chief Diversity Officer. So please give them a warm welcome.
As many of you know, about a year ago, Melissa and I kicked off Women's History Month with a M&M in the Morning show. And I do want to say we rocked that, and we are about to rock it tonight for all of you as well. This has been a long time coming, so Melissa, take it away.
Thank you, Mary Ann, and I am super thrilled to have you all here with us this evening. This is not only International Women's Day, it is the first time Wintrust Financial Corporation has had a formal International Women's Day celebration. So please, can we give Wintrust and all of you a grand round of applause? I think, what was the term you used?
We're making herstory today.
Herstory.
It's a historic event.
So listen, I'm going to speak to the ladies. I feel like I'm on, stage at the concert. I'm going to speak to the ladies for a minute. But this is your month. This is your night. This is your day. This is your story that you're writing real time. So this is a time for you to celebrate you, celebrate each other, and celebrate all of the wonderful things that you do on a daily basis just to make your world amazing. So, in the spirit of the Women of Wintrust, I want you to give us a big wow. Wow. Yes. So there's so many people that we have to thank for getting us to this point this evening. As Mary Ann said, a year ago, we got together and had this kooky idea. First of all, let me just real talk. You know how we do. Real talk. Mary Ann sent me a podcast and said, listen to this. And I'm like, okay, love a good podcast. Well, the podcast was about menopause. And I was like, oh, I like her. She's not acting like stuff doesn't happen to people. I like her. So we got to talking, and I really felt we had this kinship, this connection. And so we decided, let's just have conversations with women, for women, about women. And that's not to the exclusion of anyone else, but we know that it is important to take a pause and say, wow, this is about the women of Wintrust, and this is about her story. So the M&M in the morning, it wasn't a podcast, it was actually a talk show on screen. It was super cool. We hadn't done it again because we're just busy people, but here we are, M&M in the morning, in the evening.
We're bringing it back. We're bringing it back.
So here we go.
Yeah, and I want to say too, one more woo. For all the men that had the courage to attend tonight, you rock as well. Thank you for joining us and supporting us.
I actually want you to give a real round of applause for our male-identifying coat check team in the back. Coat check, yes. But we also have to really be honest with you all and just really share that were it not for the support that we receive endlessly, honestly, from Ed Waymer to Rich Murphy to Tim Crane to Dave Dykstra, to, I see Tom Zadar's back there. Forgive me if I don't call names because I'm in shadows. But these are individuals that have often said yes, when, and how much. So, but more often than not, yes, when, and how much. And on an average year, any average year, the population of women at Wintrust has been 58 to 60% annually. You have women like Marianne, who is a chief executive officer in our trust company. We have so many women who are in president roles and in other chief kinds of roles who are just, excuse my language, just doing the damn thing on a daily basis. We couldn't be prouder of this very moment. So I do want to give credit where it is due. Besides us getting all of this extra attention that we have enjoyed from the executive team, I do want to say a really big thank you to the Women of Wintrust leadership team. So they are one of 5 business resource groups. That's what we call our network, our grassroots networks of employees. They are one of 5. And they are not even quite a year old. They just had their debut in November 2022. So at this time, I'd like all of the leadership team to please stand. Let's give them a round of applause. They put this together. You saw them bring this table up here. These are not individuals who are scared. And then if you are a member of the Women of Wintrust Business Resource Group, please stand. In counting, if you are one of our righteous males who are in the room who are also a member of the Women of Wintrust BRG, and our BRGs are open to everybody, please raise your hand or stand. We want to also recognize you too. They're shy. They're shy. They're shy. When you see them, say, oh, that must be you. Thank you. That must be you. So we're going to go ahead and move along in our program. We have 4 dynamic women that you are going to hear from today that is just, you know, talk about real talk. I think you are in for it. So don't go fill your glass up right now because that's just too disruptive. Have your friend send you something. But, you know, you're about to hear a conversation amongst 4 powerful, dynamic women who are just making history in their own way as well. So at this time, I'd like to bring to the stage our panelist, Selena Roldan Cirillo, CEO, and please, we got to give him a CEO, Illinois region of the American Red Cross. She is also a member of the Wintrust Wealth Management Board of Directors. Did you all hear me say American Red Cross CEO? We're not even playing. We're not playing. Not the D-list. We got you. Okay. Next, I'd like to bring to the stage Jill Falgren, who is founder of The Possible Life Incorporated.
Jill.
Next, Dee Robinson, who is CEO and president of Robinson Hill Incorporated. She is also a member of the Wintrust Board of Directors. Woo! Last but never ever least, I'd like to bring to the stage Olga Camargo, CEO and founder of Shenix. Welcome, ladies. We're so thrilled to have you today. Just to get us started, and then we'll just roll on from there, and Marianne and I, we're just gonna do a dance this evening. So here we go. If you could please, each of us share a little bit about yourselves, and what was it about this invitation, this event that had you say yes when you were contacted? So why don't I just start with you, Olga, if you don't mind?
Oh, I'll
Closest to me?
Absolutely. Well, I'll say that a little bit about myself, you said. So, Olga Camargo, the founder and CEO for Shenix, and a little bit about myself. I've been in the financial industry for over 2 decades. I'm getting close to that 3rd decade, so do the math. And I've enjoyed myself going through this journey just because of the people that I get to meet every day. And my learning through this professional journey, my evolution from working in an economics group all the way to becoming an investment fiduciary. But I think that more importantly, it's about the impact that I might be able to have and the impact that people have on me. And so why I said today yes, I said yes because I did want to come and share with you guys information that I think is needed for everyone's growth, and also just excited to be here to meet new people. And I'm just really darn through with the pandemic and not being able to see people. So that's why I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you, Olga. Dee?
Well, first of all, hello, Wintrust women. I want to hear that. Woo! Come on. Well, first of all, it is an honor and a thrill to be here. And first of all, I could say I didn't have a choice, but we all have choices. And so it is my honor to be here. And of course, I'm here because it's Women's Day. So come on, happy International Women's Day. So when you think about a day like today, why wouldn't you want to show up, right? And then think about that and how we show up every day. And first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about my business. I want to thank all of you, at least most of you. So I own and operate restaurants and retail and airports across the country. And so you've been in many of my restaurants, from Frontera Grill to Ben & Jerry's to a whole host of Let Us Entertain You brands. And I'm also a partner with Hudson News. So how many people in the audience, Hudson News, water, newspapers, all I So thank you all for your support. And as I think you've mentioned earlier, I'm also thrilled to be a director for Wintrust Bank.
Jill, please.
Hello, everybody. So nice to be here. And I'm an executive coach. I am based here in Chicago, born and raised. And as a coach, the work that I do is really focused on helping leaders and executives be their best and do their best. And that really is about finding their authenticity, finding their own path, and creating their success. Every journey is different. So as I think about why I'm passionate about the work that I do, I look at my own journey and I realize that before I became a coach, I wasn't very intentional about my career, and I was doing what came to me instead of really thinking about who I am and what's true for me. So that's why I'm really passionate about helping others, and it's also why I wanted to say yes today. I did say yes, because it really is an honor and a privilege to be here with you all, to be with this esteemed panel. And, you know, part of the reason that drives me is because I truly believe that we need to celebrate women. And we also need to recognize that, in my experience, the accomplishments and capabilities of women are often undervalued, overlooked. And so if we can impact one person today, if one person hears one thing that makes a difference for them, that's a win. And boy, I sure hope that we have many, many wins today. So thank you all, and thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bring us home, Selena.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Selena Roldan Cirillo, and I am the CEO for the American Red Cross of Illinois. So thank you so much to each and every. I'm so excited. I just felt really filled up seeing all of you here and being able to celebrate International Women's Day with all of you. So I serve as the CEO for the Illinois Red Cross, which essentially means that I get to work with superheroes every single day. The mission of the American Red Cross is to go out and alleviate human suffering during times of disasters and emergencies. We serve 12.4 million people across the Illinois region, responding to local and national disasters, with the number one disaster we respond to being home fires. So I literally get to experience this across with, again, the incredible dedicated volunteer workforce that we have. But I've spent close to 20 years now in the nonprofit sector, and I am a social worker by training and by heart. So really what has brought me here today was that I've had just the incredible privilege to work alongside working families, working mothers, young children, communities across the city of Chicago, and have really committed my passion to ensuring equity, fairness, and access to all people. And I have to say, one of the primary other reasons that I said yes was because one of my bosses, one of my amazing American Red Cross board members, asked me to also be here, and I'm seeing some of my other bosses that are in, also incredible women leaders that are in the audience. And I think, to me, again, this part of being able to have other women that are really not only just kind of opening up doors and opening windows, but literally elbowing the way forward as they've done for me. And I'm so incredibly grateful, and it was one of the other reasons that I wanted to be here today.
Excellent.
Thank you so
Let's
much.
give all of our panelists a round of applause. Marianne?
And I'm proud to say we didn't have to leave any heel marks on the foreheads of anybody on the way up.
Maybe on the chest.
Let's get it started. All right. Jill, this year's theme in honoring International Women's Day is embracing equity. How do you define equity for women versus equality? And why is this distinction so important for everyone to understand?
Terrific question, and it is really important. And the way I think about equality is you're giving everybody the same thing. So that sounds really great, and if you don't dig below the surface, that sounds like perfect. Everyone's got the same thing. So, for example, a company might promote or hire multiple people with different backgrounds, identities, experiences into the same role, title, level. So they might promote that as equality and move on. Check that box, we're done, right? Now, if you look at what equity is really about giving individuals the resources they need so they can level that playing field. So that identity isn't prescriptive of what opportunities or resources people get. So if you go back to my example, where this organization has multiple people, same level, same role, equality, and then you look at maybe some of the things that may be happening under the covers or maybe in plain sight, right? So I'm curious, have any of the women in here ever been in a meeting and asked to get the coffee, clear the dishes, take notes for the meeting?
Order lunch.
I'm seeing, there you go, right?
Clean up the dishes.
Maybe
It's okay to do that if they're asking the guys to do it.
I was just going to say, and maybe you're noticing that as the woman, you're the one asked and other people aren't. Another example. So has anybody here ever been in a situation where you're speaking in a meeting, a conversation, and people keep interrupting you? People keep talking over you? Or maybe you've raised a suggestion or an idea or offered up some kind of perspective, which is maybe ignored or even diminished. And then a few minutes later, somebody else says exactly the same thing, and that idea is picked up. I'm hearing some hell yeahs on that one, right? so that's an example of where there's not necessarily equity, right? Hey, we'll let you in the room, but we're not going to listen to you. We're not going to allow you to speak. So if you can see where I'm coming from here, it's a big distinction. And in my opinion, you're not really going to get true equality if you don't also tend to equity.
Right.
Dee, would you care to elaborate any?
Yes.
I saw the little facial expression. You're a horrible poker player, Dee.
She says with a sigh.
Well, oftentimes I think about equity and equality, and this is an easy way maybe. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, what does she represent? She was about equality. Thurgood Marshall, equity. She talked about even playing fields. Now, what I will say is inequality, inequity has taken up residence in way too many organizations, and we need to evict them, right? It's time to end. Now, I want to use one example. She's talked about using her voice and talking up in meetings and all. Some of those things, by the way, I want to make sure we understand we also have to be responsible for the things that happen to us. And we also have to think about how, when they happen to us, how we react. Our reactions are actually the most powerful, whether you see it, but we have to use our voice. So when I think of inequality, when I think of inequity, we actually all know that we witness it. We inherently know what it is. Then I ask you, then what are you going to do about it? How are you going to end it? She talked about the power of one. We don't think that we can solve such a big problem. I'm going to say, yes, we can. She talked about yes. Later on, I'm going to talk about why we should be saying yes more. But I truly believe, given whatever spectrum a company might be, an individual, if we inch them somewhere to the other side, there's a lot of empathy that's required, a lot of patience, but we see it all the time. We don't need to keep talking about it. What we need to do is start doing something about it.
Good. Next question.
Huh? Oh, sorry. I was so engrossed in what,
No, she was still
what
trying to
Dee
she's
was
thinking
saying.
about
I
what
was
to do
like,
about it.
evict
She's
them.
thinking, that's
Yes. Sorry. That was awesome. Okay.
She was thinking about ways on how she's going to change tomorrow and then they expect those things. She was thinking about that.
Did
She's
I say
not entirely
Melissa
wrong
and I
about
tag
that.
team very well together?
So, Olga, how have you seen any of your current or past organizations, how have you seen those organizations create a more inclusive workplace by embracing equity or otherwise? And what were any of the steps that you may have personally taken to I'll use Dee's language, to help evict some of the inequity?
So in my past professional work, I was helping out an organization, a financial firm, with the being more inclusive and obviously offering more opportunities to underrepresented minority groups. And I did end up actually spearheading that whole initiative. And what I realized in talking to some of the individuals that wanted that opportunity was sometimes that they were probably not in the role that they could have been, they could have really carried out what they want to do. Sometimes it was in business development. Sometimes it was in being able to provide an expertise to businesses, organizations, just in general. And the more that I actually started to learn about what the desires were and the intentionality that they were moving forward with, I realized that we needed to create a space. So one of the things that I ask leaders is okay, well, if you know what the need is and you know what you have in terms of this wonderful talent, what kinds of opportunities and spaces are you creating? And sometimes I feel that leaders may, not move as fast because they just basically think that they do have to have some kind of very structured type of platform or program, but I would say that I'm the kind of person that likes to have individuals that want to participate more in, advancing those organizational goals, its mission, to the table. And I'm about a round table all the time because I believe that everybody has something to contribute. And I think that part of that leadership or part of the new mindset is to just understand you are going to learn as a leader as well. And I think that people feel that by but leaders not having the control of what the conversation or the narrative will be at the table, they feel that they're probably lacking in leadership. And I would say, no, you have more leadership when you include more people, and you will also be able to bring in more followers. And not just followers, people that can actually enhance your leadership skill sets, right? So I would say, be about the new mindset, which, if you are looking at the way that these other maybe programs are in place, if they're not working, talk about it. Why isn't it working, right? We talked about we've heard about the Great Recession. I think this is, and the Great, resignation. This is the great conversation, I would say. And I think that there's so much in each of us that in terms of talent and just ideas, I believe that we can work together side by side and be able to really advance, again, not just your personal goals, but also the organizations. And I think that's really more of a win-win.
Can I add to that?
Sure, please.
First of all, thank you for that. That was just poignant. And when I think about our role in this, first of all, we may sometimes just simply have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And as I was preparing for today, I started to think about, why are we so uncomfortable? Why aren't we willing to have spirited, brave conversations? So first of all, there's a little forgiveness that I want you all to give yourselves. Sometimes we just don't know how to talk to someone who doesn't look like us because we haven't had much experience. I used to be the co-chair for Leaders United, an organization of African American and Jewish leaders. And it was astounding to me how many people, we would do seders, we'd do all these events, had not actually had many interactions with someone of color. And if we think about where we go to high school, frankly, in my high school, I went to boarding school, I was a minority, truly. There was a few of us, and you can count on two hands. But it's okay. Now, what I want you to think about is within the courage to say, you know what, you may be a little different, you might have a different sexual preference, whatever that difference might be, and just say it's okay. But if we start thinking about why you're uncomfortable, because see, we put the onus on other people, just sort of understanding it, back to saying yes more, thinking about, you know what, I see this person on the other side of the room who doesn't look like me. I love affinity groups, by the way. But if we keep talking to each other about our problems and not taking it outside of our circles, we will not solve the problem. Back to what I was saying earlier, some of this responsibilities is ours. So just think about when you have those moments, and we'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about the corporate culture and environments and things we could really do. But I really believe that just being able to think about why I might be uncomfortable and lean into that moment alone and start examining yourself, and then maybe then saying, you know what, I'm going to push through that anxiety, that whatever it is, and I'm going to reach out. And I'll ask you all to do that for this month. Just try once and watch what happens. It will not be as bad as you think.
I love that. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Speaking of equity, when they came out with men's Spanx, I felt like, now you're gonna know what being uncomfortable is.
How many of you have it on right now? Just raise your hand. No, I'm kidding.
Right? Amen, Spanx.
That's equity, you're right.
Selena.
We have to write these little tidbits down and end this and send it out. There's going to be some nice sound bites from this.
I haven't heard Be Bold yet, but we're going to hear Be Bold.
If they suddenly got interested in their drink, maybe they have the Spanx on.
Selena, forging gender equity is not limited to women solely fighting the good fight. Allies are incredibly important for the advancement of women. What ways can our male colleagues assist in creating greater equity for women? And is there anything that you do regularly to better balance the scales and level the playing field?
Thank you, Marianne. Well, I heard some recognitions and some applause and woohoos for the men that are here today. So I want to again thank all of the men that are joining this conversation today. And I'll start by saying the Harvard Business Review published a study that said that when men are included in gender inclusion activities, events, initiatives, companies see a 98% progress toward their goals around that work versus 30% of organizations and business who don't when men are not included. And so, but they also differentiated that there's a difference between inviting men to events like this, which is wonderful, versus actually having them be part of developing the initiatives and the works together, right? And I think, and in part though, but what is their role when they do that? And I think that some of the ways that I've seen men do this well is first to show up, to listen, right? Like really be in the spaces where they are listening right now. Really also respecting the spaces that are for women. Many times when we're having these conversations in the work that we're doing, sharing that vulnerable side of us of things that have been painful in the experiences to get to where we are. Being, right, getting uncomfortable, right? Being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And then also really being co-partners in allyship, really understanding and getting to know and understand what women's progression has been, what the historic systemic issues have been that have faced women who have tried to work up, whether it's been in nonprofit, corporations, or businesses. So I think one of the things that I really try to do is, at least within my organization as well, and I think that the Red Cross and like many other nonprofit organizations, there are women where you see women, many women in leadership roles. And often in nonprofits, you see more gender equity than you might see in other business and organizations. But in the executive levels, you don't always necessarily see that. And I pretty regularly, particularly in disaster and emergency response and management, you'll see more men than women in those spaces. And so it really is having direct conversations with men and at kind of pointing those pieces out, looking around the table and seeing, where women are missing, and often asking men to be part of those plans to be able to build partnerships, initiatives, and really create allyship.
Can I just say thank you for sharing that? Our business resource groups are structured in that way. So we do have the Women of Wintrust. We also have one called Leadership Coalition, and it has a co-headship, a male and a female co-headship, and the entire leadership team is balanced kind of 50-50 in that headship for all the reasons that you named. We didn't realize how brilliant we were being, so thank you for underscoring all of that. But, we really have tried to really engage men, just not as signatories, or co-signers on things, but to really, help them learn, because this is their journey as well, and to help women also. The last thing I would share with all of you is that we just wrapped up the first cohort of a very large sponsorship program internally. And we have a program called Pair to Win. I say it's a two-sided coin. One side is sponsorship, the other side is mentorship. The mentorship side is open to everybody in the organization. The sponsorship side, it's invited. And it is a very small group. And the senior most executives, I'm talking CEO or one click away from the CEO, 57 of them, most of whom were men, were assigned a protege. 67% of those proteges were women for 1 year to have some of those intimate conversations. Intimate was not the right word. Meaningful.
There you go.
Impactful.
There you go. Speak for
Serious.
yourself.
Right?
Speak for yourself, Melissa.
Right? Conversations. And we did see some outcomes that's really suggested, wow, I don't feel like I've been listened to in that way. So this is a journey, a process. Everybody has a role to play. So thank you. Thank you for putting that out there. Sorry.
Any of the other panels
I would
want to
love
elaborate?
to.
Jill, yes.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you for that, both of you. A couple of things I would add to that is I'm going to pull out a sound bite that Olga shared a couple minutes ago. I heard her say, I believe that everyone has a contribution to make. And I think if anyone's live tweeting, maybe you could tweet that out. Because I think that's really powerful. And maybe taking it even a step further, not just any contribution, but I think everyone has a valuable contribution to make. And I and totally agree with this idea that we as women can't do this alone, and that allies are critically important. And two things that I would love to point out. One is, it really starts with awareness. And it's very easy to not have to be as aware of inequities, inequalities when things are going pretty well, right? So starting with awareness, asking questions if you're a man, an ally, somebody who wants to make a difference here, right? Asking questions, looking below the surface at what's really going on, what's happening, what isn't happening. And not waiting to be asked to participate in these types of initiatives, but not only seeing, not only being aware, but really trying to understand and then translate that to action. Because if there's a powerful opportunity here. There's a lot of value. There are studies around women leaders and the impact that they have. And we're all losing a lot of opportunity here by not elevating women, by not taking action. And so it starts with self. It starts with what can I do to be a little bit more aware, and then translating it to how can I not only show up at the event, but actively make a difference, actively elevate the voices in the room.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
So as an entrepreneur, oftentimes I have to go out and raise money, and I'm actually doing that as we speak. I'm not asking you for any. Yet. But I talk about asking for money, and I've coached entrepreneurs about their raise. So what's important about that is I need you to think about who you want to be your sponsor. You also want to look at the individual and see if they have a pattern of helping others, nurturing them, coaching them, mentoring them, sponsoring them. If they have not had any kind of track record of that, I'm going to suggest that you find someone that does. Just like the money example. If no one has a propensity to lend money, why are you wasting your time? Go to the person who actually looks like they actually support entrepreneurial efforts. Go to the person who you've already seen bring people up within the organization. Now, here's something else I want you to think about. We always think about mentorship, sponsorship. I always say sponsorship is when they're talking about you when you're not in the room. Because that means they're talking to someone else about you, and that helps build. There's something that I call reverse mentorship. Because whether it's a sponsorship or a mentorship, generally you're going there to get something from someone. But what about you? What do you have to give? The reality is, in the reverse mentorship world, what I mean by that is you're asking a senior executive or someone in your life to help you, right? But you have gifts too. Or if it's an older executive, you may know more about social media than he'll ever or she may ever know. So offer that through articles or whatever, but that's how true engagement happens, when we're helping each other, when we're giving. And that spirit of giving is where we're going to propel our lives forward and find a lot more joy. So just think about that as we think about how do we want to move our lives forward, whether personally, professionally. Think about who you want to spend your time with. In the book, I guess I forgot to mention I'm an author. I talk about courage circles. This is really important. So, okay, we did an eviction. Now I'm going to have you do laundry. I want you to think about the people in your lives. They say that we are the sum of the people we spend most of our time with. When I think about the courage circle, The people in our lives are the people that inspire us, empower us, and stretch us. Think about that. Stretching, we should all be thinking about learning all the time. But those people are going to be the ones who will invest in you and help you on your journey. We don't do anything alone. Me is we. So when you think about all of these things, I want to get the best life, I want this great career, I want to be in her position, because she's done this job really well.
It wasn't a straight line.
Well, I happen to know a lot of folks here at the bank, and you know, there's a spirit of that, and thank you for mentioning that, but that's something that they designed to help people. And part of that is done because some people need the help. But again, it's back to taking full responsibility on how we advance our careers. Who's in our lives? Who do we want? Find them, seek them out, and just watch the magic happen.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said.
I heard a phrase the other day saying the best mentors choose the mentee, not the mentee choosing the mentor. Mm-hmm. And so that goes along the same lines as what Dee just said, is those mentors out there that think, you know, you're just waiting for that mentee to come forward and say, I want you to mentor me. I think you have the opportunity, distinct power and opportunity to find your mentee yourself. So very, very well said.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of what we've heard thus far in conversation, we got some more to go.
I know, we got a lot more to go.
What we heard thus far is really being able to give voice to headwinds and tailwinds. What do you see as keep consistently showing up as some of those barriers, right? And how can I help those who have the power to remove barriers? How do I help them understand that these barriers, these headwinds are really existing for individuals? So you can have best program in the world, but if structurally, if systemically and systematically the barriers are in place, that's what needs to be removed. And sometimes it's just, there's just not an awareness. There's just not an awareness of it.
I think somebody was working behind the scenes with mine because I got paired with a young man in the IT division. And for those of you that know me, you know I'm very technologically challenged out there. So I intend on learning a lot from my mentee this year. Take it away, Melissa.
So, you know, there are some particular categories that stand out for women when it comes to workplace inequity. Typically, that's around pay, right? It's around exposure and support, that we've talked about, and it's also around promotion. So, what's an example of a time that you have been faced with an inequitable situation in any of those categories? How did you navigate that? And what advice would you have for those who may be in a similar situation? Olga, do you want to go?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, at this financial firm that I was at, there was this desire to really tap into that talent, right, that the firm had. And so, yes, I was helping out others, but at the same time, I had to help myself out too, right? And so this is where, here I was in an economic analysis office. I was the production editor for this chief economist, but I also knew that after working there for several years, that I was not going to become an economist, that I wanted to go into becoming an investment advisor. And with that, at that firm, making probably history by becoming the first Latina there to be an investment advisor. How I was going to get there, well, you know what? I didn't see how I was going to get there. Pretty much it was not going to be a straight line, right? Because it hardly ever is. And so I had to basically build that relationship with some individuals that could help me get there. And I just didn't see it how. And, you know, sometimes it just takes individuals to get to know you, get to know your passion, get to know that you are fully committed, that this is not just something that, oh, let's give this a try, because that would have been a major investment in me from that firm, right? So you have to ensure that yes, the promotion at that instance, I felt I was being promoted, even though I ended up getting the same pay, right? But I felt it was a promotion because I was going into the space that I wanted to be into. These individuals eventually came back, and how I got there, they picked up the phone and they said, so-and-so's coming over, Olga's coming over, effective, this was a Friday, on Monday. What? I'm like, this is happening? I mean, I was, very excited. I couldn't believe it, but it's a testament, right? And it didn't just happen where I asked for it and like next week it got done. No, I know that they had to also digest that information, figure out the timing, the best timing for me to do that. But it did come about like a year and a half later. But I had to put in some work ahead of time, which I was willing to do because it meant that much to me. And so 2010 is when I went into that role. And so I will forever look back and be very grateful to those individuals that helped me out, because that's what it takes. You have to have support. And sometimes the promotion that you're looking for is a promotion that you may not exist as the natural next step for you. It exists in another space. And I felt today, I mean, I just look back and I'm just so happy and proud of myself for having the courage to ask, because you just never know. You sometimes don't have the courage to ask because you think they're going to laugh at me. They're going to say, you don't have what it takes or whatever. But you know what? Those are sometimes your own insecurities, and you have to get through that. If you have to talk to yourself in the mirror in the morning before you go on, you're like, today is the day, this is what's going to happen. And even if it's not, you have to tell yourself, whatever you see, you like in terms of a vision for yourself, I'm going to tell you this, pursue it. Because I can't imagine not having taken that elevator ride up to this individual's office and making this request and asking him to consider me. And I think I would have, right now, if that wouldn't happen, I would have looked back at that and I would have regretted it. And so I'm just happy that I didn't didn't succumb to like those insecurities. And so I can just tell you, take me as an example, ask for what you want, even if it's a different role, a different space where you know you're going to thrive. I think that if you start talking with the appropriate individual at the organization, at least they'll listen to you, and they'll also keep you in mind when opportunities come. So think about that.
They can't find you if you don't say, right?
Exactly.
What I really, really love about what you said is so many things, by the way, but you really spoke to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You never know when those calls, those opportunities are going to come. There's so many rooms that you're not going to be in where those decisions are being made, right?
That's right.
The other thing I really hope that everyone takes away is you said essentially pump yourself up before you have to go in and have one of these high consequential kind of. How many of you have your own personal theme song that gets you pumped up? You know what? If you don't, let me give you a few suggestions. Lizzo, It's About Damn Time is one. Beyonce's, what is that? You Won't Break My Soul.
She's on fire. She's on fire.
Right? Like, seriously, on your drive in or your commute in or whatever.
We won't sing, we promise.
She needs to speak for herself. But, please.
I'm looking across the room right now, and I see myself in you, and that I know there's something we all share. We all either have a dream or we imagine a better version of ourselves in the future. So she talked about pay, she talked about promotion. First of all, I want you to know your value. Know who you are, what you bring to the table. You don't have, I love the song because I have them too, my walk-on song, whatever it is. But the fact is, you're going to walk that song because you know it, you have it, you got it. You have everything that you need right now. A situation happened in the room backstage, and someone said, I had a reminder, stop being apologetic. Stop thinking that you do not deserve that raise. Dear friend of mine, she's actually she's in the book. She tells a story. She's at a baseball game with a colleague, and they happen to be talking. She learned that she was being paid, you want to hear this? $100,000 less for the same job.
Wow.
Think about that, $100,000. But he knew she was in this position, and they had this moment, and he said, I want you to know. They had a friendship that developed back to those allies and everything. He said, you need to go in there tomorrow and demand that this will get you what you should get paid, and accept nothing less. Now, of course, I said she should have asked for more because there was probably a return, the interest rate involved, all the money she hadn't. But she did it, and you know what? She got it. She knew. She worked hard. She knew everything. $100,000. Now, when you know what you're bringing to the table, when you know you're volunteering for great assignments at the bank or anywhere, know your value. Now, I'm going to say this, if you aren't valued, so that's why I left my corporate life, then you should think about where you should go to be valued. But you can create those environments for yourself, but never be apologetic. Go in there, and I think you owe me. No, by the way, here's something I want everyone to do. If you're not tracking all the things that you've done, succeeded, and accomplished, because when that review comes up, now I do with my team monthly. By the time that review comes up, they will not know all the things that you've done. And you should not just go in there. I don't, by the way, promote on tenure, performance, and contribution. When you walk in there to get that raise or ask for it, you're going to say, here's what I did here. Your boss won't remember. Some people don't even remember what they did yesterday, and you want them to remember what you did, you're back to being accountable. But think about that. Never, ever, ever. Right now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, because I know there are people in the room who think, you know what, I should be earning more. Then be intentional about why. Tell your story. Help people understand. And it's okay, ladies and men, to toot your own horn. There's ways to do it that's constructive and humble. But, this whole idea of pay, promotion, inequity, and inequality is burns in my heart at times. But I am also trying to empower women and men to go out there and get what they want in this life. So that better self, instead of you imagine it down the road, why not right now?
Amazing.
May I add one thing to that?
Yeah, I just want to say, we're going to run overtime. Everybody okay with that? I'm okay with that. Okay. Go ahead, Jill.
Quick build on what Dee is saying, which is it's not just okay to talk about yourself, to promote your accomplishments, to let people know your value. It's imperative. And my example of what I would be talking about here is not that different from Olga's, but to build on a couple of things the two of you said, part of it was a client that I was working with that I was going to talk about who wanted to increase her visibility and exposure. And 3 things that she did, because she realized that the challenges were her boss, who was kind of shielding her and not really giving her the opportunity to get visibility. The organization, because she was seeing there weren't a lot of female role models in her organization. And guess what? The third thing was herself. Because part of the thing that was holding her back was she had the belief that promoting herself, talking about her accomplishments was bragging, that she was humble. And as a humble person, she couldn't do that. So guess where we started? We started with her. We started with helping her get a clear-eyed view of what her situation was. And we started with what Dee said earlier, helping her get the courage to step outside of her comfort zone by looking at her mindset, challenging those beliefs, and looking at where she may be missing out because she wasn't sharing her story, wasn't sharing her accomplishments because of this belief that she had. Mm-hmm. And so it takes steps and practice and one action at a time to get there. But if you don't take that first action, it's not going to happen.
A lot of personal responsibility, I think, is what you've all been saying.
And bringing in others.
others.
Building those relationships, getting that support, absolutely imperative.
Yeah, we definitely want to have time for the audience to ask questions, so we're going to keep it moving along here. Selena, your work with the Red Cross has taken you across the country to support diverse communities after disasters. Can you share your experiences and learnings in building diversity, equity, and inclusion within the Red Cross locally and/or nationally?
Thanks, Marianne. The one example I have for this is probably the one where I've done some of my most meaningful work and the work that just has really changed my life. So in 2017, for those of you that remember Hurricane Harvey in Houston, if you remember, Houston had 51 inches of rain dump on it in about 3 days. Houston typically in a year gets 50 inches of rain, just for you to understand what that looked like. And in the George R. Brown Convention Center, so if you think about the United Center, at the height of the disaster, there was 15,000 people living. So think about going into the United Center and there's 15,000 people that are there sleeping on cots, families, children, people who have lost absolutely everything. Houston has the second largest undocumented population in the country. And when we walked into there, and I was actually, a colleague of mine got there first from LA, and he called me about 6 days into the response and said, Selena, I'm standing in the George R. Brown Convention Center, and there's no Latinos here. And you're looking around, you're asking yourself, how is that possible? Now, during the time that was happening in Texas, the Latino community was being targeted by different groups in law enforcement and the government at that time. And so the Red Cross, as being a neutral organization, our only role and our only objective is to be able to make sure that we can serve people no matter what. But still, at this moment, this entire community is not coming to the Red Cross for help, is seeing that it's unsafe to be able to do so. And so myself and a colleague formed what became the initial Latino engagement teams that now deploy during disaster responses with the Red Cross around the country to go out. So really recruiting local volunteers, people who speak the language, who are culturally competent to provide access to Red Cross services and help during times of disasters. And so this idea that we're not going to wait for someone to come to us for help, we're going to go to them. And this now has been implemented across the country, and we continue to use these teams, Latino engagement teams during times of disasters. But I use this as an example of what it means for all of us, even with working with the best of companies, with the best of intentions that are doing such good work, we sometimes can see where there isn't access. We can see that things aren't right and things aren't fair. And I remember at the time also being fairly new to the organization, kind of raising my hand and saying, this is a problem. The entire community can't get to us and can't get help. And thankfully, because it is the Red Cross, quickly they said, okay, what do we need to do? Here are the resources. Here's the support to make sure there's equal access. But the other part of it, so companies may not see it, even though it may be really clear to us, right? So when we don't see women at the table, we don't see a community at the table, that we need to be able to say that. But also they may not have the knowledge, the tools, really the knowledge to be able to know what to do. So that's the other part of our role, is being able to work with companies, businesses, organizations to say, this is how you do that work. So I think that is really one of the things that I've been most proud of, but I really mention that as a way that, again, kind of talking about where our voice is, to make sure that we are really speaking up when we see something, even in places that have the best of intentions and are doing the best work.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Took a lot of courage.
Courage. Absolutely. So one last question, and then I hope you have your questions. You're thinking about your questions in the audience, and I'm not sure if we have a mic that we can run. But Olga, you mentioned the Great Resignation, and I think you said the Great Awakening.
Yeah, the great conversation.
The great
that
conversation.
we have to have. Yeah.
That I also like to say, the great realization that something's been off for a minute. Mm-hmm. And, there's no denying that the pandemic definitely has taken its toll on the workforce, and particularly on women in the workforce. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 80% of the workers who left the labor force in September 2020 alone were women. That's 4 times the number of men that left. Within that women population, there were over 300,000 were Latinas, and over 58,000 were Black women. More than 1 million of those women were single mothers, many of whom were already living below the poverty line. So this issue of equity is not just a workforce issue, it's a life issue. So for any of you, what's the obligation of leaders of some of those organizations? Selena, maybe I'll come back to Selena. Maybe I can come back to you since you gave a really, striking example of what happens when there isn't diversity at the table. Right. Diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, diversity of ideas, that opportunities get shut off.
Yeah.
Right? Could you say a little bit more about what leaders of these organizations need to do, the C-suite, if you will? What needs to happen to make the new reality of work, the new reality of the workforce and the labor pool, workplace, make it work for everybody?
Sure. And I'm going to say something about the workforce, but I also want to say just about something that we do as women. And so I have some very dear friends that are here in the audience, and I have a dear friend who's one of our deputy governors. And she is someone who I have to say, it's one thing where, when you're sitting at the table and you're like, oh, there's no women here at the table. And then you kind of like give them names of people. She's literally like, no, hold on, I'll wait while you call them. Right? Like, and that's a difference. Like, there's a difference between and how you actually say, what's the next step of not just being like, here are the names, here are the people that need to be at the table, but I'm actually going to sit here and wait and ensure that these individuals can be at the table. So I think, and when we think about our workforce, right, and I know one of the things that I do just want to mention is I was a single mom for a long period of time. My son is 18 now, and so, yes, he's 18. He's 18 now. And so I mentioned this about in terms of what can the workforce do, and thinking about supporting women in creating work schedules, work environments that support all women, right? I have amazing friends who are single and they're incredible. And I have amazing friends that have children and or just have a partner, right? And so how do we create environments and workplaces that can support all women? And I do just want to say in this part about being a mom as well, that really when we can give ourselves grace, when our companies and our businesses can also give ourselves grace. I had this moment, I think I was going to the California wildfires, I was being deployed and I was running to the airport and I couldn't take my son to school that day, so I had to put him in an Uber. I think he was a freshman, and I was feeling guilty about not driving him to school, and so I'm texting him, from on the way to the airport being like, okay, and you had your soccer bag, and then you have your lunch, and then you have this, and then when you get done, you're gonna do this, and then you're gonna go to grandma's, and I was feeling so much guilt about this. And he texted me back and he said, Mom, I'm in my Uber and my Uber driver's Puerto Rican. She knows who you are. And I told her where you're going, Mom, and I'm so proud of you, right? And like this idea that we, right, women can have it all if we just know what that means for us and what we decided we want it to be. And so when we have companies and businesses and C-suite and individuals that can allow that to be the workplace for women, I think we're making progress.
Flexibility. Thank you. That's awesome.
We're ready for any questions from the audience. Raise your hand, please. We'll bring a mic over.
Can I add
see a
one
hand
thing
here.
while they're doing that, Marianne?
If
Can I add one thing to what she
Sure,
said?
Jill, go ahead.
Can you stand up? I forget whose hand was up, but I saw a hand
While
over
we're
here.
waiting
If you
for
could
the
go ahead
mic,
and stand
Jill
up.
wanted to add to that last.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I would like to offer up, your beautiful story and sharing kind of what organizations can do. I would offer up that, at least for public organizations, there's an obligation a fiduciary obligation to shareholders, right? And I would ask organizations to think about what cost to them for not including women, for not including an equitable workforce. And is that fair to their shareholders?
Yeah. So, and there is a cost, right?
Exactly.
Somebody's not getting served.
That's right.
And some other organization is going to take care of that.
Yep.
and rob you of that opportunity.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for that.
Heather McGee
Question.
has a book called The Sum of Us, and she talks about the problem with sexism, racism, and that we think about the cost only being to the individuals of color or women. It's a cost to all of us. And I think it was Bank of America that did a study, and that what the total cost to the Citibank.
Citibank.
Thank you.
Yep.
And do you remember the number?
16 trillion. 16 trillion is the cost of the economy when what they said was due to discrimination.
That's it. And then we were talking about what we can do. First of all, we can cultivate an environment of courage. That courage becomes a value of the organization. And last but not least, you can't manage what you don't measure. I truly believe the reason we aren't seeing any metrics around this issue, back to being courageous and brave, no one would want to really see. We actually know what it looks like, right? But nobody really wants to admit that it's that bad. I'm saying wherever you are, it's okay. But wherever you're on the spectrum, start there and then grow from that. But you'll never get to a great place unless you measure. And if you think about it, public companies, I think it's going to come a day when they all are going to be required to have that measurement. They talk about diversity and their demographics, but I truly believe as we start inching our way, looking at the success of mentorship, sponsorship programs, all of that, but then we all embrace it as an opportunity for us all, we'll see us move forward.
So
There's some questions out there.
Yes, please.
First, thank you. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and appreciate the women of Wintrust and Wintrust for hosting it. I think the last question is really what got me going. I'm Jill Eade. I'm the executive director of Girls on the Run Chicago, and I was thinking about how girls today are going to be women tomorrow, and the success of that transition is all of our responsibility. And so I'm curious how each of you think about your responsibility in that transition, and then the business community's responsibility in that transition.
So can I make a request?
Yeah.
Can you have someone repeat
I
the
was
question?
going to say, I'm not sure I heard the whole
Hold the
question.
microphone a little
so-
closer.
Yeah,
please.
could you hold a little closer?
Can you hear me better?
Let's
Yes?
try it again.
Okay.
Yes.
So my question is,
Perfect.
so I work for Girls on the Run Chicago, and we know that girls today are going to be women tomorrow, and the success of that transition is the responsibility of all of us. And so my question is, how do you think about that individual responsibility and the business community's responsibility to support our girls in that transition?
Question is, how do you help? What do you think? How would you help that effective transition from girl to woman? Is basically what she's saying. What's our responsibility? What are some of the things that we should really focus on doing?
Can I ask?
Please.
I'll start with this.
Yeah.
I want us all to actually, in those girls, see ourselves in those girls, and think about what we either did get that was great, or what we wish somebody would have given us. And in that moment, just give it to them. You know what they need. Sadly, there's just these young girls are coming up and they don't feel empowered. They don't, help them understand their voice to be heard, not a box to be checked. All of us in this room, your voice should be heard, not a box to be checked. But young girls are looking to us. I say now, I've figured out after all these years of being an entrepreneur, being in banking, by the way, I started my career in banking, that my obligation is to shorten the runway to success for others. We know what we've gone through. And I don't want anyone in this room, and certainly not a young girl or boy, to have to go through that. Certain obstacles we have to go through, because that's how we learn, but there are certain parts of this journey that are just unacceptable. Help them.
And I was just going to add to that I think this idea of mirror images, right? So how meaningful it's been for us when we've, and I remember this also really during the pandemic and on Zoom, like how obvious was it when you joined like a screen and you were the only woman, right? And it's just all these other squares of men, you don't really notice it as much as like then during the pandemic, you're like, wow, I'm really the only one in this space. And I remember when I started in this role 7 years ago when I was at an event with young Latinas, and I remember several of them coming up to me and saying, you have no idea what it means for me to see you in this role, or I've never met a Latina CEO before. And so this other part of going back to, again, how important it is for businesses and groups to be able to create those mirror images, because we can accomplish what we can see. And when we haven't been able to see it that way, it becomes more challenging for young women.
You have to see it to believe it.
See it to believe it.
So I would say that one of the biggest things, and going back to the girls, they sometimes feel the way that they maybe see their mother feel. And that's true. And I believe, at least with us, part of like our mission with Sheenix, which is a fintech app for Latinas, going back to those figures that were shared earlier, in 2020, just between March and May, 700,000 Latinas in leisure and hospitality were laid off. Later on that year, between August and September, another 377,000 Latinas left the workplace to go take care of children. That was over 1 million Latinas that year. So the reason for Sheenix is because we need to make sure that our Latinas, it helps them out with finding that job, we're working to be able to get them the equal pay, to start there. Number 3, it's about getting them financial resources in terms of, partnering them up, getting them to maybe get courses through maybe third parties to be able to economically empower them. And then there's other things that are offered, other financial services. But what I want to say is this: Latinas, if they are not able to, number one, make a financial decision, because guess what? There's no money in the bank, right? We need to address that. They need to get a job. How does that make a family feel, especially if it is a single mom? How does that make her children feel? Not to see their mother, and it could be any mother, right? Not employed. How do they basically take in that energy for themselves? We need to make sure that when we're addressing our community, that we go to the heart of it. And that is basically to the women that are there helping nurture their children and also educating them and giving them that empowerment, that economic empowerment. So these are things that as leaders, whether you are in business, whether you are in nonprofit, wherever you are, just know that that work is needed, whether that be on a peer-to-peer basis, at an organizational basis, or outside of that. But that's where we have to start. We have to start with the backbone of our communities.
Absolutely.
Next
I
question.
think absolutely. I think we have time for one more.
Last question, yep.
We can take them.
Hi. So mine's kind of a two-pronged question. I'm sorry, I know it's the last one. So I have, thank God, seen a lot of success for myself in the last year.
Can you hold it closer to you?
Sorry.
Now so we can hear you?
Thank God I've seen a lot of success for myself in the last year. But at my age and seeing where other people are, how do you deal with the remorse of I should have done more or I could have done more? And in addition to that, I'm trying to help build my team, but a lot of them are my age or older. So I don't want to broach that conversation in a disrespectful way of helping to build them up. So how would you start a conversation of we can do more, we should be at this table, we deserve it as well?
She was saying that there are some things that she wished that she would have done differently, and she has a team, and she wants to get advice on what you would say to a team that kind of keeps them motivated. And what these are my words, not yours, but essentially, how do you move past the curse of the shoulda, woulda, coulda? Ooh.
I'll start.
Did I get that right? Was that what you? Okay.
I'll start. How do you get past the woulda, coulda, shoulda? Is you look for you look at what's happened and you look for the lessons. And you find that learning and then you move forward. And it's not to ignore what happened, but by focusing on those woulda, coulda, shouldas, you're giving up your power because you are focusing on things you cannot control. So once you learn those lessons, if you can look at your situation and think about, okay, where am I now? Where do I want to be? And how do I move forward from here? Using the lessons you've learned and your skill and your talent and your knowledge and whatever resources you have, and take it one step at a time. I don't think that answered all of your question because I couldn't quite hear it, but I hope that at least gives you some starting point in terms of where do I start?
Can I add one thing? This is my journey I'm going to share with you, and I hope that it helps you. And I've been talking about this going around the country. There's one asset that we have that we can mine really, really well, and that's our mind. And our subconscious mind does not know the difference between an imagined or a real thought. So what you think about all the time will manifest in your life. Now, I'm sharing this story because I sit here today having left my job. My mom thought I lost my mind. I've gone boarding school, went to Penn, I went to Kellogg, had Johnson & Johnson, Leo Burnett, and then I said, I want to leave. I'm going to go do something else, Mom. I want to go do this dream. She's like, are you crazy? No, I did it. But I was derailing my own success. You know why? So when I didn't have as much money as I thought I needed to be on the journey, I suddenly was gripped with fear, doubt, limitations. And here's the reality. When you have doubt, when you have fear, you have no ability to be creative, no ability to solve a problem. It literally is impossible. There's scientific reason for that. I was drowning in doubt, limitation, and I even got to a point when I did not know how to pay my rent. That's real. And suddenly I'm like, what am I gonna do? And by the way, I didn't have parents I could call and say, hey Mom, rent's due, can you? No, it was on me. And I don't know, I asked someone to give me this rubber band, and I actually created one for myself. I don't know where I got this idea, young lady, but we have to be conscious of how we think. So I got this band. Anytime I had a negative thought, I popped it. I don't have enough money. I popped it, and I had to rephrase it to something positive. And I did it over and over and over again. But it was those thoughts that were keeping me from my dream. And for me to advance to doing what I do, I went for nothing. I'm a multi-million-dollar company, author now, and I'm going to first time announce publicly that I'm a bourbon maker. That's a journey. But you know what? I can, I will, and I have faith. Say yes more. Trust yourself. Don't ever think, I don't have enough education. By the way, everyone, I did not have any money for any of my ventures out the gate. And how many times say, well, we don't have enough money. How many times do we limit ourselves, right? Come on.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If you have a really, really good idea, you've done the work, growth rate plan, someone will fund you. By the way, Wintrust funded me. Don't close doors before they open. We are our worst enemy. Believe you have everything, and guess what? If you don't have it, find someone who can help you. I'm like, I don't have this. Then I'm gonna go find someone who has a resource or the knowledge. I'm not supposed to know everything. So trust yourself. The resources are all around you. Just open your eyes, control this.
And live with no regrets. Think about it, hourglass, you turn it over, start to sand over.
Right?
I understood there was a gentleman that had it, please. There you do, you have one coming.
Yeah, you need
Can't hear you.
Oh,
okay.
What happened
Mike,
to it?
Where's Mike?
come on, we can't hear you.
We gotta get a mic to him.
Where did it go? Does she have a mic? Where did the mic go? No, here she. Oh, sorry.
To the rest of you.
I know that guy. Thank you. I promise you it wasn't a trick that would like to not to give you a.
That's okay.
It would be the only man who's asking a question.
Exactly. It gets turned off.
You are not a victim.
This is a great panel. My name is Philip, and this is from Ms. Robinson. The first deal that you got, or maybe the first deal, tell me the journey about Ben & Jerry's, how you got there, and then how did it take you where you are now?
What was it?
Ben & Jerry's, the first deal, maybe the first deal, but your journey to get that deal and how it brought you to where you are now.
He said your first deal was Ben & Jerry's. What did you do to get to that deal? And then so really quickly, how did you get from that point to here?
Thank you, Mr. So really quickly, back to mindset, and that truly was the start. I had a lot of people telling me what I could not do. So one other thing to the young lady in particular, I want us to understand something. When other people tell you what you can't do and that idea is crazy, they're really telling you what they can't do. Why are we willing to trust people who haven't even ventured in doing the things that we want to do, right? So Phil, from Ben & Jerry's, first of all, I'm going to tell that quick story. I thought, you remember when the Midway Airport opened up for new concessions? So by the way, that was my very first business. I went from Sears, and then I heard about this opportunity at the airport. And I thought I'm going to put everything in, best architects, best everything. And I thought, oh, I'm going to win this. And guess what? I did not. Now, many people would then fail and just say, it's done. Or even my very, very first deal, I kept calling this guy early, late, never got to him. Because they don't necessarily return your phone call doesn't mean that they're not interested in helping you. It might just mean that they're busy and you got to be creative and find him. So this one guy I called, and this got me to Ben & Jerry's, was that I called, we all got gatekeepers. Generally, when a gatekeeper leaves, 1.5 hours, everybody, remember that. They will usually be in the office for a little long. That's the time to call, and you get them on the phone. And I know this guy said, oh my God. Ben & Jerry's went from, I lost the bid, but I also think it was the best thing that ever could have happened to me. Because I then knew how to navigate the city of Chicago. I'm in multiple airports across the country now, but that was one, and he's like, no, you gotta talk to the decision makers. That's the other thing. Make sure you know who you're talking to. And earlier I talked about who to talk to, the people who can help you. But I didn't give up. And so went from that, but it's just been the journey. And so for the one out at Midway Airport, one of our successful, and also, by the way, Ben & Jerry's didn't think they wanted to do it. I called them. There's a pattern here. I'm persistent, right? If I want something. But guess what? When you want something, you don't let anyone else get in the way of your dream. They had never been in the city of Chicago. Cold month, cold city, right? Here's what I helped them understand. This is why you want to do this, and I'm the person to help you do it. No, oh, no. But I kept calling. But guess what? We became among the top 3 in the country. When you believe in your ideal and you know it's a good one, so you're right. I went from that, but you leverage that, and you leverage it again. And I mean, there's a lot of stories that unpacked in how I got from that one enterprise to being in other airports, because it's about partnerships, it's about everything. But see this beautiful stage here, women? Here's what I do also know. Women empowering women. And also, men empower us too. So look around, get the help, just stay with your dream. If it's what you want, that's all you should be focused on in getting it. Absolutely.
We obviously, can everyone hear me? We obviously learned a lot of lessons today. Thank you to this incredible panel. We also learned a lesson in timing is everything. And so we're going to stick around till 6:30. The panelists will as well. And for any additional questions, we're sorry about running out of time. I do want to thank one very important person. Each business resource group has an executive sponsor, and we were very fortunate to have Kate Bogie, our Chief Senior Counsel for Wintrust Bank, become our sponsor for the Women of Wintrust. Unfortunately, Kate was ill today and was unable to make it, but I know she's going to watch the replay, and so a big hand of applause for Kate Bogie. Woo-hoo! I would not be able to do anything regarding this event without the co-chairs of the program committee for WOW. So I would like one more round of applause for Nancy Vassar, Tanya Berg, and Jill Araki. Thank you so much for all your hard work. This was incredible. All it showed us is that there's power in numbers, there's power in our voices, there's power in being courageous. Dee mentioned that she wrote a book, and I spent 14 mornings on my treadmill reading it and earmarking it. It's an incredible book. So we have a big surprise for everyone. Don't look now, but under your chairs, if you have a Post-it note under your chairs, you will be receiving one of Dee Robinson's books.
Don't
and so
pull
come
a
up
Post-it note out your
afterwards.
purse.
I said don't look now.
Does it have? What does the
Yep.
Post-it note look like?
Yep.
Just in case they have Post-its in
Yeah.
their purse.
Yeah, and don't pull those Post-its out of your purse and put them under your chair. Thank you all again for joining us. This has been an incredible journey. I wanted to leave you with a quote that really had a lot of meaning that I ran across. Dee left us with this women empowering women quote, right? Madeleine Albright, our former Secretary of State, once said, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women."
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. There's a special place in hell for women that don't help other women. After seeing you all today, I now know a little bit about how heaven must feel. You guys are amazing. Thank you all for coming out.
Please, again,